All right, it's Movember, day 7, and I'm going to do a little video on Pete Walker's Complex PTSD From Surviving to Thriving, 13 tips for how to deal with emotional flashbacks. So, I've been using Pete's work for a while now. I discovered this book and I loved it. It's still a book that I refer clients to, and it helped me a lot because I grew up in a family system that was dysfunctional. And I identified a lot with Pete's story. The tool I want to just read out tonight and discuss a little bit is, Pete calls the response we have, this amygdala hijacking, as an emotional flashbacks. Just keeps it simple. And so he's got some tips of what to do when you're in it. But firstly, let me just, from chapter 8 in his book, talk about managing emotional flashbacks. So emotional flashbacks are intensely disturbing regressions, in brackets, amygdala hijackings, to the overwhelming feeling states of your childhood abandonment. When you are stuck in a flashback, fear, shame, and or depression can dominate your experience. These are some common experiences of being in an emotional flashback. You feel little, fragile, and helpless. Everything feels too hard. Life is too scary. Being seen feels excruciatingly vulnerable. Your battery seems to be dead. In the worst flashbacks, an apocalypse feels like it will imminently be upon you. Sounds like it could be impossible to feel that way, but if you've lived with these symptoms, then you know what Pete's talking about. When you are trapped in a flashback, you are reliving the worst emotional times of your childhood, especially because let me reframe that. When you are trapped in a flashback, you are reliving the worst emotional times of your childhood. Everything feels overwhelming and confusing, especially because there are rarely any visual components to a complex post-traumatic stress flashback. So we're having this experience, but I'm not having really any real identification with what's going on around me. I've just been triggered. This is because, as Goleman's work shows, amygdala hijackings are intense reactions in the emotional memory part of the brain that override the rational brain. These reactions occur in the brains of people who have been triggered into what he calls the 4F reaction so often, that minor events can now trigger them into a panicky state. And I will do a thing on what he calls the 4Fs, the 4 trauma types that Pete describes that we can be in, so you can help you identify which one you can focus on and treat. But for the purpose of this, I'll just go to the handout. Now you can go to petewalker.com and download this PDF. If you're a therapist, if you're someone in recovery, if you know someone or are living with someone with PTSD that might benefit from these, please go to petewalker.com and download this for free. So 13 steps for managing flashbacks. And he has a little disclaimer at the top saying you focus on the bold print. So he, when we're under stress, we can't remember chapter and verse, but we can remember bumper stickers. So, number 1, say to yourself, I am having a flashback. Flashbacks take us to a timeless part of the psyche that feels helpless, hopeless, and surrounded by danger, as we were in childhood. The feelings and sensations you are experiencing are past memories and cannot hurt you now. 2, remind yourself, I feel afraid, but I am not in danger. I am safe now, here in the present. Remember that you are now in the safety of the present, far from the danger of the past. Now, of course, this is confusing because you have got to check out, because we can have damaged boundaries. Am I safe? I mightn't be safe, so I need to check that out. If I'm not safe, get safe. And safety needs to be determined by you. But if this is an emotional flashback I'm in, then largely I'm having, I'm having a big feeling, and yet it's not, the trigger's not real. So that idea that remind myself I am afraid, but I'm not in danger. Because sometimes feelings aren't facts, but it's a fact we're feeling it. 3, Own your right-need to have boundaries. Remind yourself that you do not have to allow anyone to mistreat you. You are free to leave dangerous situations and protest unfair behaviour. Boundaries is one of the things that Pia Melody says is the most important first tool to get in codependent recovery. So if you don't know about personal boundaries, I will certainly do a video on this to have on my YouTube channel, but seek out the work of Pia Melody on boundaries and it will put you in good stead. 4, speak reassuringly to your inner child. The child needs to know that you love her, him, unconditionally, that he, she can come to you for comfort and protection when he or she feels lost or scared. The reparenting work of Pia Melody, the no one's coming, it's up to me now, the time when I was a child is over, so that internal family system is my job now to reparent. And so learning to have a compassionate self-dialogue is so important in recovery, and for a lot of us we have to learn that. We're not hardwired to do it. 2 more handouts I'll read from over this Movember campaign to fill up this new YouTube channel of mine is Shrinking Your Inner Critic and Outer Critic, and it'll speak more to this one on that. 5, deconstruct eternity thinking. In childhood, fear and abandonment feel endless. A safer future is unimaginable. Remember, the flashback will pass as it has many times before. 6, remind yourself that you are in an adult body with allies, skills, and resources to protect you that you never had as a child. Feeling small and little is a sure sign that you're in a flashback. So if you do feel like a little person in a big person's body, it is trying to link ourselves that I am a big person. Sounds crazy, but when you've got PTSD, it's not that crazy. I'm a big person with resources. Who can I call? What can I do? How do I reach out and look after myself right now? 7, ease yourself back into your body, and this has got some subsections. Fear launches us into heady, worrying, and numbing and spacing out, disassociation. So A, gently ask your body to relax. Feel each of your major muscle groups and softly encourage them to relax. Tighten musculature. Yeah, it's late at night, 10:30, long day. Tightened musculature sends unnecessary danger signals to the brain. B, breathe deeply and slowly. Holding the breath also signals danger. So this isn't necessarily a time to do box breathing, but just breathing mindfully and gently, and then activating box breathing when you're out of the acute part of the flashback. C, slow down. Rushing presses the psyche's panic button. So breathe and slow, sit if you can, relax the muscles. D, find a safe place to unwind and soothe yourself. Wrap yourself in a blanket, hold a stuffed animal, lie down in a closet or a bath, or take a nap. Get into a place that feels safe and secure for you. And E is feel the fear in your body without reacting to it. Fear is just an energy in your body that cannot hurt you if you do not run from it or react self-destructively to it. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Number 8, resist the inner critics drasticizing and catastrophizing. A, use thought stopping to halt its endless exaggeration of danger and constant planning to control the uncontrollable. Refuse to shame, hate, or abandon yourself. Channel the anger of self-attack into saying no to unfair self-criticism. B, use thought substitution to replace negative thinking with a memorized list of your qualities and accomplishments. Now, if this is resonating and making sense to you, this book has got the tips in it on how to use thought stopping and thought substitution. So you can certainly get that. You can get this on Kindle for about under $10. It's just insane. So you could be reading it tonight if you really like it, if you like what you're hearing. 9, allow yourself to grieve. Flashbacks are opportunities to release old unexpressed feelings of fear, hurt, and abandonment, and to validate and then soothe the child's past experience of helplessness and hopelessness. Healthy grieving can turn our tears into self-compassion and our anger into self-protection. 10, cultivate safe relationships and seek support. Take time alone when you need it, but don't let shame isolate you. Feeling shame doesn't mean you are shameful. Educate your intimates about flashbacks and ask them to help you talk and feel your way through them. It's a big thing to tell partners and loved ones that you've got complex stress. Generally, they'll know that you've got the symptoms, but to say, look, I do suffer, and these are the ways I suffer, and if you can and you're available to me, if you can help me with this, it's really important to learn to ask for support. It's not their job to support you, but it's important that I can learn to ask for support. 11. Learn to identify the types of triggers that lead to flashbacks. Avoid unsafe people, places, activities, and triggering mental processes. Practice preventative maintenance with these steps when triggering situations are unavoidable. I knew one person that had a particular sort of condiment that, when smelt or cooked with, caused them a flashback. And they had to inform their partner that was the case. Because when they would walk in after work and they were surprised by it, they could go into a post-traumatic stress reaction. And that needed to be shared with their partner, and they needed to have other options around that, because this is a psychiatric disorder that they're dealing with, not just a preference. 12. Figure out what you're flashing back to. Flashbacks are opportunities to discover, validate, and heal old wounds from past abuse and abandonment. They also point to our still unmet developmental needs and can provide motivation to get them met. So as you go through this and get better at working out what it sends us back to, and there is certainly other tools. Brain spotting is an incredible tool to be able to help us track back and sort of work with our clients to follow them back to the source of the traumas, release it from the body. So it's helpful to as you go through and track this stuff, what is my story? Where do I come from? Dan Siegel certainly talks about that as an important component about not passing trauma on, that we have understood and interpreted and identified with our story. And 13, be patient with the slow recovery process. It takes time in the present to become unadrenalized, and considerable time in the future to gradually decrease intensity, duration, and frequency of flashbacks. Real recovery is a gradually progressive process, often 2 steps forward, 1 step back, not an attained salvation fantasy. It's a big line. Real recovery is a gradually progressive process, often 2 steps forward and 1 step back, not an attained salvation fantasy. Don't beat yourself up for having a flashback. So, 13 tips for how to manage flashbacks by Pete Walker. It's also in long form in this book, Complex PTSD From Surviving to Thriving, available on Amazon. I don't get any money for selling these books. I just love handing on good resources that can be useful and helpful. Over the Movember campaign, I will be presenting a bunch of tools from this literature. I hope it's helpful. Please pass this video on to anyone you think might benefit from it, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more updates through November or Movember. Take care. Be gentle with your heart.